going. So what are we going to do today and this week? So yesterday, Monday, I went live at 11 a.m. and we went through lesson 1, which was showing you how to understand the question, generate ideas, and plan your essay. Make sure that you check that lesson out because the rest of the course will not make any sense, and these might seem like they're not as important as writing and vocabulary and grammar, but they are equally as important. So make sure that you go back and check this. Today in this lesson, we're going to show you the writing stage, so how to write introductions, main body paragraphs, and conclusions. And then tomorrow at 11 a.m., I'm going to go live and show you how to improve your vocabulary and your grammar. So yesterday I set you a homework task, so let me give you a little bit of feedback on this. The feedback is not going to be as good as it was in the live session, but I've tried my best to give you some actionable feedback. So this was the question. In spite of the advances made in agriculture, many people around the world still go hungry. And then we asked 2 questions. So this is as an example of a student who did this really, really well. So the idea for main body paragraph number 1 was food is too expensive. So very simple, very easy to write about, easy to understand for the examiner. Explanation: some people's wages do not cover the price of food each day, so they have explained that. Okay, so the idea is relevant, it makes sense, it answers the specific question for the first question, and then the explanation explains this. Example, they're going to use the country that they lived in. And remember that this is not your essay, this is your plan, okay? So this is not designed to be a full essay. Don't look at this and go, oh, they didn't write enough or anything like that. This is just designed to be a help and a plan when you're writing. Then main body paragraph number 2, idea, government and fellow citizens should assist its patriots. So this is a real student's essay. This is not mine. So this is a good idea because it's relevant. It answers the specific question. It is easy to understand, simple enough to explain. Rich people can help the poor from starving. Okay, explain that main idea. An example, donate, provide food for needy instead of party celebration during anniversaries. Okay, so they're going to use an example of rich people celebrating and spending a lot of money on parties instead of donating food. So they're going to use a real example from their country when that happened. So let's look at some common mistakes. So I can't show you real examples because that was done in the live lesson. We have to record these lessons days before we make the live lessons to make sure they're all ready. So let me go through just some common mistakes. But if you want really good feedback, try and join the live lessons. So number 1, irrelevant ideas. What do we mean by irrelevant ideas? Ideas that simply do not address the question. So how do you overcome this? You do this properly, and you make sure that your ideas are relevant by focusing on understanding the question. So if you go through the steps that we showed you in lesson 1, that means that you're going to fully understand the specific question and understand what they want you to do, and then generate an idea using one of the techniques that we showed you in lesson 1. If you do that, then it is very, very likely that your idea will be relevant. Most of the ideas are irrelevant because either the student has not understood the question or they have used brainstorming. Brainstorming often results in very irrelevant ideas. A lot of you had very vague ideas, so these are ideas that address the general topic, but they don't address the specific topic. So again, use the step-by-step system we gave you for understanding the question, and you'll be able to avoid very vague ideas. Remember that your idea should answer the specific question, not the general topic. Attempting to use high-level vocabulary unsuccessfully. So many of you had very irrelevant ideas or vague ideas, but you were trying to insert lots of really high-level vocabulary into your plan, and the vocabulary made no sense. It wasn't actually addressing the question at all. This is because many of you have been taught incorrectly by teachers who don't really know what they're doing, that the key to getting a high score is to use lots and lots of high-level vocabulary. That is not actually true, and we'll talk more about that in tomorrow's lesson. A lack of coherence. So if we go back here, coherence means, does it make sense? All right, so if your idea does not really make sense, that is incoherent, or your explanation or your example doesn't make sense. So a good test is to ask yourself, if you gave this plan to the average person on the street in London, like an English-speaking country, in London or Toronto or Sydney, and you gave them the question and you gave them this plan, would they understand what the plan means without you really explaining anything more to them? If not, then it is not very clear, it is not very coherent. And if it is incoherent, then your essay is going to be incoherent. So your thinking will reflect in your plan. So your plan will be a reflection of your thinking, and your plan will be, or your essay will be, a reflection of your plan. So if your essay is incoherent, it doesn't make any sense, it's difficult to understand, it is highly likely that either your plan doesn't make sense or your thinking doesn't make sense. So your thinking needs to be clear, your plan needs to be clear, and that will mean that your essay is clear. A lot of you also simply did not follow the instructions whatsoever. You're all adults. You can do what you want. This is a free course. You're not, absolutely up to you what you want to do. But what we have found at IELTS Advantage over the years is that students who do not follow instructions in class or on an online course, that means that they very rarely follow instructions on test day. So it is an English exam, but you do have to do it the way that the examiners want you to do it. And everything that we're teaching you in this course is designed to just keep the examiners happy and get you the scores that you need. So if we ask you to do something or suggest that you do it in a certain way, I would strongly suggest you do it that way, because your way is probably not as good as ours, because we are IELTS experts. That's all we do all day, every day, and we have the most successful IELTS course in the entire world. So if you have a choice between doing what we tell you to do or doing what you think is best, it is probably better that you do what we do. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a software engineer, I'm not a lawyer, and if you guys probably are one of those professions, I wouldn't ask for your advice and then completely disregard it if you were a doctor or a lawyer. Trust experts. We know what we're doing, so trust that we will give you the right advice. Okay, so just to remind ourselves of the 7 key steps: thinking, planning, introductions, main body paragraphs, conclusions, vocabulary, and grammar. Yesterday we focused on this. Today we're focusing on the middle 3. Tomorrow we will look at the last 2. So think of your introduction, your main body paragraph, and your conclusions as building blocks of your essay. So in order to build a house, you need solid foundations underneath the house, you need walls, and you need a roof. Every house needs these basic fundamentals. No house, no good house, lacks one of these 3 things. You could have great foundations and great walls, but if you have no roof on your house, then you're in trouble. Or you could build the best walls in the world and an amazing roof, and if you have no foundations, your house is going to collapse and fall down. In order to write an essay, you need to be able to do these basic things correctly. You would never talk to a builder. So let me show you my house. All right, so this is the house that we built. This is actually my office here. So when we built this house, the builder didn't come around and say, I make the absolute best walls in the world, or the best roofs in the world, or the best foundations, because you just expect every builder in the world to know how to do those basic fundamental things. That is exactly the same when writing an essay. Understanding how to write an introduction, how to write a main body paragraph, write a conclusion, they're extremely basic and fundamental. But unfortunately, most of you don't know how to write them. And that's totally fine. Don't worry about that. But if you don't understand the fundamentals, the basics, then you're never going to be able to write the entire essay. So that is what we're going to focus on today. So this was similar to one of our previous students, and we're going to look at some of her work today. Priyanka from India. She went to several IELTS gurus in her local area. I've put gurus in quotation marks because they're not really genuine gurus. And attended other online courses. They told her that you could never repeat a word or any ideas in her essay. So you'll hear a lot of very strange things from these gurus and these, cheap online crash courses. And they'll say things like never repeat a word or never repeat any ideas in your essay, and lots of other very strange things. They told her that all that she had to do was memorize words, phrases, and structures. And so never repeat a word, don't repeat any ideas in your essay, memorize lots of words and phrases and structures, and you'll be fine. How many of you have heard that before? She failed 7 times, and she still told me that I was wrong and her teachers were right. So I said to her, listen, writing an essay is very, very simple. You just need to understand the basic fundamentals. And she said, no, everything that you're doing here is wrong, and all of my other gurus told me it was right. Well, my question was, well, if they were right, why have you failed the test 7 times? So I taught her how to do the things that the examiners are actually looking for. So a very just simple strategy that we use with our students is teach them what the examiners are looking for and give them the tools and the skills in order to give the examiners exactly what they want. And that is a very, very powerful strategy. So what are the examiners looking for? Demonstrating that she understood the question. We looked at that yesterday. Clearly answering the question. Again, we looked at that yesterday. Developing her ideas. Writing clear paragraphs and using vocabulary and grammar effectively and accurately. She told me that she was worried, and on test day she didn't follow our advice and she failed for the 8th time. She went back to all of those memorized structures, memorized words and phrases, and never repeating a word, and all of that bad advice, because so many people had told her that. And this happens a lot with our students. No matter how many times we tell them, like, this is the way to do it, and how much evidence we give them, they still don't follow our advice. What we did with her then was just teach her these basics, all right? And when she understood these basics, she was able to then go and get the score that she needed. And the reason why I tell you that story is because many of you don't need to learn new things as much as you need to forget everything that you have been taught already, especially if you have failed the test before. And many of you have failed the test many times. The struggle for you is forgetting all of that bad advice and embracing this very simple advice. And that is difficult because many of you believe that the reason why you failed is because your ideas were not complex enough, not complicated enough, not high level enough. And then this Chris Pale guy comes along and tells you, it's really simple, just follow these basic things. You might be afraid to use them because you're afraid of failing again. If you are still afraid, just continue to watch this video and then go and check out our success stories, and they will show you that every single student felt this way, but as soon as they started doing the basic things correctly, then they got the scores that they need. So there's three basic elements of an introduction for a double question. So this is a double question, and this is only the introduction for double questions. We don't have time to go into the other types of questions, so we're just going to focus on this one type. So there's three basic elements, not three sentences, three elements. First, you need to paraphrase the question. Answer question 1, answer question 2. So your introduction for a double question, a question where you see two questions, should be paraphrase the question, briefly answer question 1 and briefly answer question 2, stop, go on to the next paragraph. So what we're going to do now is show you how to do these things. So write in an introduction for a double question. Double question looks like this. You have the question statement at the top, and then you have two questions, a double question. That's why called a double question because there's two questions there. Despite developments in farming, a huge number of people still suffer due to hunger. This is because some climates are unsuitable for crops, and the solution is genetic modification. This is Priyanka's introduction. And what she's done here, first sentence, she's paraphrased the question. This is because some climates are unsuitable for crops. Answered the first question, and the solution is genetic modification. Answered the second question. So paraphrasing. There are a few different ways we can paraphrase, and the three easiest ways are to use synonyms, changing word forms, and using different words that allow you to express the same meaning. There are many other ways that you can paraphrase questions. This is just a short fundamental course, so we're going to look at the main ones, the key ones. Now, a fourth way is quite controversial, and many of you will completely disagree with this because your teacher has told you that you can never, ever, ever use the same words. If you can't think of how to change them, then you have two choices. You really have three choices. The first choice is spend the next 5 to 10 minutes panicking, trying to think of a word, and waste a huge amount of time. That's option 1. Option 2 is take a chance and just attempt to change it to something that is probably wrong. Okay, option 1 and 2 do not sound very good. Option 3 is just repeat the word. So you should change as much as you can, but you're a human being. You don't have, Wikipedia built into your brain. You're not a cyborg. If you have a choice between putting in something wrong or wasting your time or just repeating the word, repeat the word. So let's have a look at this. This is the question statement, and we're going to paraphrase this. This is what Priyanka did. So in spite of, despite. All right, so using a different word that means exactly the same thing as these 3 words. The advances made, developments. Okay, exactly the same. The advances made, developments mean exactly the same thing. In agriculture, in farming, agriculture and farming are synonyms. There's no other way of really writing that, and it is fine to repeat one word in. The examiner is not going to look at this and go, oh my goodness, they repeated one word in. Like, that is not how it works. Prepositions and things like that, don't worry about that. Articles, you will have to repeat prepositions and articles and very common words like that. Many, a huge number of, so again, changing it. People. Okay, so when I sat down with Priyanka, I asked her, why did you repeat the word people? And she said, to be honest, I just went blank. I couldn't think of a different way, and I just decided to repeat the word rather than waste time or take a chance on something else. I said, perfect. That is no problem whatsoever. So again, the examiner is not going to look at all of this amazing paraphrasing and then go, oh, well, you didn't change one word, so therefore you go from a band 9 to a band 4. That is not how the examiners look at it. Unfortunately, many students and many teachers would look at this and completely ignore all the great paraphrasing and just focus on this one repeated word and criticize the entire sentence just because they repeated one word. That is insane. And we have, if you disagree with that, we have 20 former IELTS examiners with more than 10 years experience each that will completely disagree with you. So who is correct? Teachers who are trying to sell you scam courses, students who have failed the test multiple times, or the people actually giving you the scores. Around the world still go hungry, still suffer due to hunger. So hungry and hunger are basically the same word, but in a different form. All right, so you can change the word form to paraphrase it. And if you think hungry and hunger are the same word, you need a dictionary. So let's have a look at some common problems so we can avoid them. Trying to change every word in the order that they appear. So many students will go in, and how do I change in? Spite, how do I change spite? Of, how do I change of? The, how do I change the? That is not how you paraphrase. You look at the entire sentence and then you put it into your own words so that it means the same thing using mostly different words. But don't do it by just going one word, then second word, then third word, then fourth word. That doesn't work. Being afraid of repeating a word, we've already talked about this, so we won't beat a dead horse. Not having enough vocabulary, simply you need to have a good range of vocabulary in order to paraphrase effectively. If you don't have a wide enough range of vocabulary, then you're probably not ready to get a band 7 or above. We will help you improve that in tomorrow's lesson, but you do need a certain level of vocabulary, and there's no amount of tips, tricks, shortcuts, hacks, lists that are going to solve that for you. Not paying attention to grammar. So when you change the form of words or you change words around, the relationships between those words change as well. And grammar is all about the relationships between words, the rules that change when you change the relationships between words. So you need to be aware of that. Simply not practicing. Like if you want to get better at playing the piano, you need to spend hundreds of hours playing the piano. If you want to become a better runner, you have to run. There's no other way around it. If you want to become better at paraphrasing, simply get lots of practice questions and paraphrase them, and you will really improve. It always amazes me how many students will look at a lesson like this, try to paraphrase once, and then say, I'm not good at paraphrasing. Would you ever go for one run and then say, I'm not good at running? Or try to play the piano one time for 10 minutes and then just say, I'm not good at playing the piano. It's not that you're not good at running or not good at playing the piano, you just haven't spent enough time practicing. Not being aware of collocations. So collocations are important for paraphrasing because certain words just generally go together. For example, harsh and climate. Typical examples are like handsome man or beautiful woman or delicious meal. You wouldn't say a delicious man, but you would say a delicious meal. You wouldn't say it is a handsome meal. Those words generally don't go together, so you need to be aware of collocations as well. Using synonyms that are simply not close enough. This is a very common problem and is related to this one. Being afraid of repeating a word. Often students are so afraid of repeating a word that they will try and use synonyms that are not really close enough. So for example, in that question you had the word agriculture. Alright, so a very close synonym of this is farming, but there are many other synonyms. So for example, horticulture is a synonym of agriculture, but can you use the word horticulture when you are paraphrasing in this context? Well, let's have a look at the meaning. Horticulture, the meaning is the study or activity of growing garden plants. Are we talking about just normal garden plants? No, we're talking about farming. We're talking about growing fruits and vegetables and things like that, and grains that can be consumed by the mass market. So how do you avoid using what we call loose synonyms? You understand the meaning of the word. If you don't understand the meaning of the word, don't use it. Why? Because it's extremely likely that that word is wrong. So now, once we have paraphrased it, what we're going to do now is we're going to outline our main idea, is the answer to both questions. So this is because some climates are unsuitable for crops, and the solution is genetic modification. So we're just briefly outlining the answers to both questions. But what we can do is we can then use this introduction to plan out our entire essay. So main body paragraph 1, this is because some climates are unsuitable for crops. Main body paragraph 2, the solution is genetic modification. We're not going to write this exact phrasing, these exact words. I'm just showing you how easy it is to make sure that you stick to the point and your essay makes sense, it is clear, it is coherent, it is cohesive, because you're using your introduction to plan out the rest of your essay. The reader knows exactly what's going to happen. So the person reading your essay, i.e. the examiner, if they read this introduction and then in your first main body paragraph you talk about this, and then in your second main body paragraph you talk about this, that's helping the reader understand your essay. Your position is extremely clear, and that is one of the key components of getting a 7 or above. And you know exactly what you are going to write about. So anything that makes your job easier and the examiner's job easier is going to result in a much higher score than your job is very difficult and it's very difficult to understand your essay. That is most students. That is 90% of students, because they are learning things that make everything very difficult and complex and difficult to do, and that makes your essay very complex and difficult to understand, and you're pretty much guaranteeing a low score if you do that. So now we know how to write our introduction. We're going to write our main body paragraphs, and just like the introductions, they have 3 elements: a topic sentence, an explanation, and an example. Again, not 3 sentences. Don't worry about the number of sentences. Worry about, are these elements included and are they sufficient? Have I done these 3 things properly? And if you do these 3 things properly, it's just like building a wall brick by brick. If your bricks are good and you have good technique, then you're going to be able to build a good wall. So topic sentences. First element, simply take the answer to the question in the introduction and paraphrase it. This will tell the reader what the paragraph is about and whether you've understood and answered the question correctly. If you can't do this, you probably aren't ready yet to get a 7 or above. So many students complain about this and say, I can't paraphrase again, I don't have a wide enough range of vocabulary. What you are saying then is you're not ready to get a 7 or above, because to get a 7 or above, you do need a wide enough range of vocabulary, and we'll tell you about that in lesson 3. So you do need a certain level of vocabulary, but don't panic. We'll show you how to do that tomorrow. But it's really important that you understand, in order to get a band 7, you must do band 7 things. I'll repeat that. In order to get a band 7, you must do band 7 things. A huge number of you talk about wanting a band 7, but then when someone like me comes along and tells you the truth, these are the things you need to do, what you say is, well, I don't want to do those things. Think about that for a second. That is probably why many of you have failed multiple times. And if you want to pass next time, you need to make the decision, yes, I'm now going to do band 7 things, and that takes time and that takes effort. But much less time and much effort than failing the test for the next 6 months, a year, whatever it is. So remind yourselves of the question. So we're going to just address this first question, our introduction. Despite developments in farming, a huge number of people still suffer due to hunger. This is because some climates are unsuitable for crops. So this is our first answer, and it is in the introduction. What we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to put it into our first main body paragraphs, and we're going to paraphrase it. This is going to be our topic sentence. Certain regions have such harsh climates that very little can grow there. So you're saying the same thing, it means the same thing, but you're paraphrasing it. And again, simply, it takes practice. And if you practice this technique, you will get much better at it, and then you will get the score that you need. Explanations. So this is our topic sentence. Certain regions have such harsh climates that very little can grow there. So what you need to do now is you need to explain this topic sentence. You need to explain how this answers the question. It is not enough to just stop there. It is not enough just to stop at your topic sentence and assume the reader understands what this means and how it answers the question. Many of you believe that examiners are some really, really intelligent people that understand exactly what you're writing about. So I'm not going to comment on the intelligence of every examiner in the world, but no person in the world can understand exactly what you're going to write and what you mean just by a topic sentence. You need to fully explain what this means, even if you think that the examiner understands it. Imagine the examiner saying, well, so what? So what that certain regions have harsh climates, and what does that mean? How does that mean that very little can grow there? You need to explain how harsh climates result in very little growing in those certain regions. You must explain how this main point answers the question. In spite of the advances made in agriculture, many people around the world still go hungry. Why is this the case? This is what you are trying to explain. So how does this answer the question? Prove to the examiner that your point answers the question, and remember that the examiner can't ask you follow-up questions. So this is the difference between speaking and writing. With speaking, what you can do is you can ask the person you're speaking with follow-up questions. What do you mean? What do you mean certain regions? What does harsh climate mean? How does that result in very little growing there? When you're writing something, the person will never ever be able to ask you follow-up questions. So you need to leave everything on the page and anticipate those follow-up questions. Remember the examiner saying, well, so what? What does this mean? So here's what Priyanka did. This is because plants need certain amounts of water to survive, and some places experience severe droughts leading to widespread crop failures. This renders advanced agricultural techniques useless without this basic necessity for life. So she has just, in a very straightforward, simple way, explained what her topic sentence means, how it answers the question. Remember, explaining is a basic communication skill. Do not overcomplicate it. Also remember that you're explaining one point. Do not start talking about a completely different point. Explain that one point. We now need to provide evidence to support our main points. Remember that you are still supporting your main point in your topic sentence. Remember that you're still showing the examiner that you're answering the specific question being asked. So, what are examples? Don't think of them as examples. Think of them as evidence. Evidence that your main point actually answers the question asked. Read that again. Evidence that your main point actually answers the question asked. Imagine the examiner saying, show me proof. What is your evidence? Why do they want this? It is absolutely essential for clear communication. You probably, in your native language, when you're explaining something to people, you probably use examples all the time. So they are absolutely essential for clear communication. They do not want you to demonstrate that you can memorize examples. They want you to demonstrate that you have the ability to use examples. They're also not testing your knowledge or your intelligence or your IQ. They just want to know, do you know how to use examples when you're writing an essay? So here are some key principles for writing examples. Avoid personal examples. The reason why we avoid personal examples is they are too personal. So the example I always give my students is, my grandfather smoked 40 cigarettes a day and lived until he was 92. Is that a good example to suggest that smoking is not harmful? Is that evidence that smoking is not harmful? No. That's just one guy with extremely good genetics, extremely strong DNA. That has nothing to do with the general point. You are trying to prove the general point. So recently, we had the coronavirus epidemic. They didn't do the tests for the vaccines on one person. They did it on tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people when they were testing those vaccines. Why? That's pretty obvious. You should be able to work that out yourself. Don't use statistics if you're unsure. You will often see this where people say, according to Cambridge University, 72% of people, blah, 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 nearly 99% of students who use them incorrectly. They just don't make any sense, so avoid them. You can use them, but only if you know how to use them correctly. And I do not suggest that you use them, because most students mess them up and they don't make any sense, which lowers the coherence of your entire essay. Keep it as specific as possible. So use a specific example, not in general, lots of people do X, Y, Z. All right. Use a specific example from your country, your city, your profession, something like that is normally very specific and relevant. Make sure it actually supports your main idea. A huge number of students just throw in an example, but it doesn't actually support your main idea. That is what it's supposed to do. Real examples from your own life are always best, but there's a difference between personal examples like my grandfather smoked 40 cigarettes a day and examples from your real. So let's use a smoking example. I'm from Ireland. In Ireland, smoking in public places was banned in, 2001 or whenever they banned it, because of the effects of passive smoke. So that is an experience from my own life, but it is very specific and it actually supports the main idea. Avoid my cousin did this. Like, a lot of people write stuff like that. So let's use Priyanka's example. For example, parts of India get very little rain for long periods of time, and this resulted in famines on a large scale in the past. So it is specific, it is relevant, it supports her main point, it provides evidence to support her main point. It's not a personal example, it's from her own experience. She didn't say, for example, in my back garden, we don't water the plants. Like, that is a very, very personal example. But in her region, I think she's from Punjab, that is Punjab or Kerala, one of the two she's from. So let's have a look at another one. For example, some supermarkets in India ran out of certain vegetables last year because of a drought. So I asked her, can you do another one? She said, no, I can't think of one. It's like, okay, can you think of any time when weather or harsh climates has affected anything in your region? And she said, yeah, actually, there wasn't many vegetables last year because there was a bit of a drought. I said, okay, use that. And again, she didn't use a personal example. She didn't say, in my local supermarket, there were no vegetables. Well, that could have been because the truck broke down. It could have been because the manager didn't order the vegetables. It could be that people in that area really loved vegetables that day. And it doesn't prove the general point. So a very easy way to write your conclusion is to look at your introduction. So your introduction is this. And your conclusion. So what do we include in a conclusion? We include our opinion, our position, and a summary of our main points. What does your introduction include? It includes a summary of our main points, our position. So what should we do? We simply paraphrase it. So we take this and we paraphrase it. But many students hate this approach. Why? Because it requires Band 7 or above vocabulary and grammar. They can't memorize a structure. They actually have to think. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to lie to you and say, you don't need Band 7 vocabulary and grammar to get a Band 7. That's obviously not true. And I'm not going to lie to you and give you some memorization techniques or tricks or hacks or shortcuts. That would probably make most of you very happy, and you would really like me and think Chris is a great teacher because they really helped me. But my goal for you guys is to actually get you to pass the test. So I don't care whether you like me or not. My goal is to help you guys. So that is my mission and the company's mission. If you want to get a Band 7, you have to learn how to do Band 7 things. So what did we learn today? How to write an effective introduction, how to write effective main body paragraphs, and how to write effective conclusions. Not how to write an introduction, how to write a main body paragraph or how to write a conclusion, how to write effective. And effective means at a 7 or above, because that is why you're here. Tomorrow, we're going to look at how to develop your vocabulary, how to improve your grammar, and how to effectively edit your writing to minimize vocabulary and grammar errors. Here's your task, your homework task. Some people get into debt by buying things they don't need and can't afford. What are the reasons for this behavior? What action can be taken to prevent people from having this problem? Try to write a full essay using what you have learned so far in this course. Try to join the next session live, because you'll be able to get live feedback. You'll be able to ask me questions, and it'll just be a better experience for you. 11 a.m. tomorrow, we will be going live for the next lesson. But as you are just watching the replay, if you guys have any questions, chris@ieltsadvantage.com is my email address. So if you have any questions, you need any help, with anything at all, just email me, and one of myself or my team will get back to you. Hopefully you enjoyed that lesson, and if you need anything, check out IELTS Advantage or send us an email, and we're happy to help. Thanks very much, guys, and see you for lesson 3.